Well, in the last couple of hours, Donald Trump has declared victory in the race to the White House. Ross King's in Los Angeles for us. And broadcaster Trisha Goddard, who, of course, has lived in America for the past 14 years, is here too. Ross, interestingly, we talked yesterday about people bracing themselves for trouble. There was a lot of apprehension in the air, you know, if Trump had lost. How are people feeling now that he's won?
Yeah, no trouble so far here, certainly in Los Angeles, but quite interesting as well, Lorraine, to look at, you know, obviously California, very much a Democratic state. In 2020, Biden won California with 64% of the vote to Trump's 35%. 2016, Hillary Clinton won California with 62% to Trump's 33%. This time, Harris won with 58% to 39%. So it's interesting over the years that change there. As you mentioned at the top of the show as well, you know, whatever side of the fence you're on, a remarkable political comeback. 78 years old, we had the assassination attempt, we had the court cases, only president to be impeached twice, and the first former president to be criminally convicted. Second president to win non-consecutive terms in more than a century, the last one being good old Grover Cleveland back in 1886. You know, we're even talking about having some ads for counselling on US TV coming up. Nigel Farage was in the front row at that, what has now been deemed a victory party. Very strange times out here. You know, we talked about it yesterday for quite some time, Lorraine, didn't we? We just said it's very weird. And it definitely didn't go the way that a lot of people thought it would go, but equally it went over much quicker than we thought too.
Absolutely. We said we might not know the results for days, if not weeks. Ross, stay with us, because we've got Trisha in the studio, and here we are. Once again, there won't be a female president. You know, obviously the Americans weren't ready for Hillary Clinton, weren't ready for Kamala Harris. What do you think has gone on here?
It's about money. You know, when it comes down to it, I think it really is about money. And there's a hope that Trump will turn back time. I don't feel it's a realistic hope, because it's happening across the world. It's not just in America. Things get more and more expensive. But there you have it. I mean, there's, you know, you hear Donald Trump talking about healing the country. There is a big divide in the United States. And Ross is in California, which has remained, you know, Democratic. I'm in Connecticut, which has remained Democratic. But there's a whole bit in between. People talk about the United States thinking it's one big cohesive country, but it's like talking about Europe. There are many different states and what have you. And Hillary Clinton was a different matter, but I don't think... Look, we know America wasn't ready for not just a female president, but a black female president. And we're not talking about black-white here, because black males weren't ready. They were a real tough sticking point for Kamala Harris to win over. I think there were mistakes made, and we were talking about, you know, her not picking Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania as a running mate. I think that was a mistake. But otherwise, I don't think there's a lot that she could have done differently after that debate. I mean, there's a lot of disappointment, and I don't see the healing, because, you know, there's been an uptick in Americans applying for passports, for instance. Really? Wealthy Americans looking into dual nationality has rocketed. I mean, that would happen before any election. But it's interesting, you would have thought that the wealthy Americans would want to stay now Trump's in. So it's a strange country. Here's a strange fact for you. One of the big problems for voting in the states like, well, Nevada reported it, but it's throughout the United States, with young voters, and Kamala was really going for young voters. A lot of them had never physically signed any document. Now, when you go to vote, you've got to prove that your signature is your signature. And it's usually a driving licence. Most young people sign electronically for everything. So there's no way to check that maybe it's the first time they've ever physically signed a legal document when they vote. And there's nothing to check that off with. So they've not been able to clear a lot of votes of young people because there's no... Can you believe there's a whole generation of young people? I think this country's going to probably go through it, where they don't physically sign anything.
God, that's remarkable.
Only do it electronically.
Jeez.
So if you have to prove that's your signature...
How do you do it?
How do you do it?
How do you do it?
Only in America.
What do you think the implications are? I mean, you know, we'll talk about foreign policy later on, but the implications are for women in the United States, because there's been a lot of talk about women's rights being taken away from them.
Well, it's not just women. Remember, if a woman has an abortion, it's not always, you know, a flippant... Well, it's never a flippant decision.
Of course.
But there are two people. There's nearly always a man involved. And as we've heard, many, many cases of women nearly losing their lives, doctors being frightened of being, you know, taken to court and all that sort of thing. I think it has much bigger implications than America actually has woken up to. And also the repealing, I mean, they've talked about repealing Obamacare and healthcare and what have you. That is really going to hit, well, Trump's base.
Yeah.
You know, it's always... Look, they voted for somebody who's been on The Apprentice. I'm sorry, but, I mean, we were kind of bleakly joking that maybe in Britain we should have someone for Love Island. I mean, the cult of celebrity...
Don't rule out. Could happen.
I know, I might have predicted something. The cult of celebrity should not be underestimated.
No, that's very true, you're right. And, I mean, Ross, we're going to talk later on, aren't we, about the whole kind of celebrity endorsement thing and whether or not that actually has indeed made any difference. It didn't seem to be. Now, everybody thought it was going to be so close. We talked about that yesterday, about it being so close. Clearly, there's a lot of, if we can call them, shy Trump supporters who maybe didn't express that they were going to vote for him, but when they were in the, you know, when they were in the booth and they had to put the cross, they did.
Yeah, I think there was certainly some of that. It's lovely to see Trisha there as well. And I think one big positive we can take away from this is that there'll probably be no more talk of voter fraud. What do you think, Trisha?
Well, you know what? One of the things I've got to say before we end anything, is I really, really wish Donald Trump, and I'm serious about this, the best of health. I genuinely do. I hope that the Republicans will be as quick to pick up on his failings as they've accused the Democrats, rightly accused the Democrats, of not having done with Joe Biden. Yes. But I wish Donald Trump the best of health, because God forbid anything happened to him, because then America will have J.D. Vance. And if people are crying into their soup today about Donald Trump, they will be screaming in distress. I don't say that lightly. I mean, J.D. Vance is... You know, Project 25, all of those things like that. And you're talking about women's rights. You ain't seen nothing yet if J.D. Vance gets in.
That's astonishing, isn't it? Are people saying, though, Ross, any positives at all from the fact that he is going to win? He is. You know, he's said it himself. He's won.
Well, that's it. You know, again, as we've said before, and we've talked about it many times over the past years, America has voted. They've gone for Trump, and they believe that he will certainly do his best and do his best to heal America. And again, going back to what Trisha was saying, it's not the United States at the moment. It's very much the divided states. So, obviously, we just hope that things go well.
Indeed. Well, he started off his speech, as we said, saying that he wanted to heal the United States. I really hope that that's the way that we go, because, that it's so important. Trisha, thank you for your words of wisdom. Great to see you, and you're looking really well. Stay healthy.
I will, and I hope that Donald Trump stays even healthier.
Thank you so much. Now, with Donald Trump on the brink of returning to the White House, as we said, let's go live to Washington, D.C. and join GMB's Susanna and Ed, who've been there all morning and all night watching everything. Yeah. Susanna, as I was saying to Ross, we thought this would be too close to call. We didn't think that you would be doing that in your airtime.
No, except that I think Ed and I are both reminded of 2016, when it feels like an exact parallel. You had a female candidate for the Democrats who was tipped to become the first woman president of the United States. You had Trump written off for everything he'd said. Back then, it was the way he talked about women. This time, it was, the comments by the comedian, garbage. Yeah. Referring to Puerto Rico, and then Donald Trump using derogatory terms about Kamala Harris, says it's time to take out the trash. People saying there's no way he can win. He talked about, didn't he, Haitian immigrants in Ohio eating dogs and cats. People just wrote him off, didn't think he was a serious contender. And actually, it's the Democrats who didn't put up a serious contender in the eyes of the viewers, the voters, and they elected him back into the White House and they said no to Kamala Harris. So I'm not entirely surprised that all the predictions were too close to call.
Yes.
It's very tight. She could become the first female president of the United States. And actually, it's Donald Trump who got the popular vote and the Electoral College.
It certainly is. I mean, he's kind of in charge of everything. He can sort of do whatever he likes. Ed, I just wonder, the implications for us, because we bang on about this special relationship with the US, but we've seen that for Keir Starmer, this is actually going to be, well, could be very embarrassing. I know he's already, congratulated Trump. But what do you think, because there's a lot of bridge building to be done, and how do you think Trump is going to, well, moving forward, Trump in the UK?
Well, look, this is a very different victory for Donald Trump than back in 2016. Back then, he didn't know about being president. He hadn't done it before. He didn't have control of the Congress, of the House and the Senate. And also, the Supreme Court was not in his favour. But all that has changed. I mean, it looks like he's going to win across the board tonight. They will control all of American politics here in Washington. And also, the Supreme Court has a majority now on his side. So whatever he wants to do, he'll be able to do within reason, within the Constitution. And also, he's experienced what it's like to be blocked, and he won't want to be blocked next time round. So what does that actually mean? Well, he has said very clearly he wants a big rise in tariffs on any goods coming into America. And the consequence of that is there will be a retaliation in trade barriers in Britain and Europe, around the world. Yeah. So any goods we buy from America are going to become more expensive. It's going to be harder for all of us to export to America. And what that does to the global economy, just at a time when we need our economy to grow in a stronger way. So economically, who knows, but it doesn't look so great. He said very clearly that he's looking for a solution in Ukraine, but not a solution that President Zelensky wants. I think Vladimir Putin in Russia will be pleased with this outcome. And if Putin feels as though he's made progress, he's allowed to keep some of those lands he's taken in the east of Ukraine, what does that mean for our wider security? Then you look at the Middle East, terrible, tragic mess. Nobody knows what Donald Trump is going to do. He says, I'm going to deliver world peace. What does that actually mean? What will happen to the Chinese relationship too?
Yeah, exactly. And Susanna, he's going to be president of the United States, but he could have ended up in jail. I mean, you had Stormy Daniels on your show earlier on, who actually was genuinely frightened.
Yeah, so Stormy Daniels, of course, the adult film star, who has become almost inextricably linked to Donald Trump, because back in 2006, she spent a night with him. And then he paid her to keep her quiet. That was disguised as legal expenses, and that was deemed to have broken electoral law, which meant that he has become a convicted criminal. And yet that hasn't stopped him getting back into the White House. I mean, a lot of people find that absolutely extraordinary. How come there's no kind of constitutional block on someone who's been convicted of a crime getting to become president? But Stormy Daniels was, you could see that she's nervous. She had to wear body armour when, bulletproof vest when she attended court. She feels nervous now. She says that she's been shadow banned, and professional engagements, speaking engagements, comedy engagements that she's done. She says that she's lost business, that, publicity's been dampened down, that she feels like there's something going on where she can't do her job properly. And she feels worried for her own personal security as well. So, talking to her, she's personally nervous, but a lot of Democrats feel really worried for the future of the United States. But it's a democracy.
Exactly.
He won the Electoral College vote. He won the popular vote as well. People have a right to vote who they want to be president, and they've voted for Donald Trump.
They did. Thank you both very much. And thank you for earlier on this morning. Good to see you. Thank you. Well, yes, and it is a democracy and people did vote and it cut through. You know, people were voting because they're worried about the economy, they're worried about jobs, they're worried about the cost of living, they're worried about illegal immigration, all of these things, and he did cut through.